Studies show that a majority of college students consume at least one energy drink per day. That's insane. One every day. And many people consume more than one per day. Which is why in this episode, we're going to be convicting some people on their energy drink consumption, from its effect on your circadian rhythm to all the processed crap companies put in your daily dose of caffeine. I can't wait to dive in. Hey, I'm Izzy.
And I'm Lexi.
And this is our podcast, The Vital Reset. Okay, so first things first, I just wanted to talk a little bit about caffeine itself, because that's really the whole point of energy drinks, right? So caffeine is, some people would say, a psychoactive substance, meaning it affects how your mind works. And so how caffeine works is it does not actually give you energy, which I think a lot of people is how they think of it. That's how I've thought of it, is it gives you energy. It doesn't give you energy. It prevents the release of melatonin and just prolongs that. So, for example, I'll explain how this works. So there is a organic compound in your brain called adenosine, and at least I'm guessing that's how you pronounce it. And this plays a big role in regulating sleep and brain activity and mood. And the adenosine has several receptors, two of which, A1 receptors and A2A receptors, which have to do with promoting relaxation and sleep, as well as mood regulation by regulating dopamine. And so caffeine is very similar to adenosine. And therefore, caffeine can act like adenosine and bind with the adenosine receptors and stop the adenosine from being recepted, and therefore it prolongs us getting sleepy and the melatonin release and promotes more dopamine in our brains. And so therefore it keeps us awake longer, gives us, at least makes us feel like we have more energy, and stops our body from continuing the normal circadian rhythm that allows us to go to sleep. That being said, there is a certain amount of caffeine that is deemed, I don't want to necessarily say healthy, but unharmful to healthy adults. And again, we are just talking about caffeine. We are not talking about coffee. We are not talking about energy drinks. We are not talking about tea. Just simply milligrams of caffeine. It is recommended no more than 400 milligrams of caffeine per day. So that's approximately 2 to 3 12-ounce cups of coffee. Your typical 8-ounce-ish cup of coffee is anywhere between 100 to 200 milligrams of caffeine typically. A lot of your energy drinks tend to be 200 milligrams. Some are 300, some are 400. You should definitely not be drinking energy drinks that are more than 400 milligrams, and definitely should not be drinking multiple of them. So that's just your recommended caffeine intake per day. I also want to put a little side note in there that decaffeinated coffee does not mean caffeine-free. Decaf coffee still can have caffeine in it. Granted, it's not nearly as much as caffeinated coffee, so decaf coffee is it can be anywhere from 2 to 15-ish milligrams in an 8-ounce cup. But if you're drinking a ton of coffee every day, even if you're just drinking it because you like the taste and it's decaf, keep in mind there is still caffeine in that. Now, there can be side effects of too much caffeine, and as you may have gathered, this might be more of an episode about caffeine than just energy drinks. And that's partially because a lot of the bad things about energy drinks is not the caffeine itself. It's the other crap they put in energy drinks, which we're going to get to a little later. But I wanted to make sure everyone's informed about just caffeine in general, because I feel like a lot of people don't really know much about how it works and all of that. So I'm going to be talking a lot about caffeine, side effects, how it affects you, your circadian rhythm, all of that. And then we will talk about specifically energy drinks. So, side effects of too much caffeine. And this can vary from person to person too. So take it with a grain of salt, and it really comes down to paying attention to how it affects your body, and it also might be a long-term thing. So also be careful in considering that, because you may not notice it right now, but you might notice it 20 years down the road. So caffeine can increase alertness for a short amount of time, but it can also increase anxiety. It can increase insomnia, and I know that might be like, well, duh, it's caffeine, but it can truly harm your ability to get good sleep. And part of that is that caffeine can actually become addictive, and that's because your brain, when it gets used to consuming a lot of caffeine over time, it can grow more adenosine receptors, which is that chemical that caffeine imitates. And so you just need more and more and more adenosine and or caffeine in order to fill those receptors, in order to be tired. And so it's addictive in that sense. And a lot of people notice when they get off caffeine, they have like withdrawals, or they have a lot of headaches, or some people get like that when they start drinking it a lot and they start getting headaches if they go a day without it. So pay attention to that as well. It can cause digestive issues and muscle breakdown and high blood pressure and rapid heart rate and fatigue, which is just kind of a long list, but it is possible, and I want you to be aware of that. Another couple things that I wanted to mention that might be of interest to you that came up when I was researching is, one, caffeine does not appear to stunt growth in and of itself. Now, caffeine does affect your sleep. It affects how much you get of it. It affects the quality of your sleep. It affects your circadian rhythm. It affects your hormones. And so that might stunt your growth. So keep that in mind. The other thing is, a lot of people say and or think that coffee dehydrates you. And yes and no. Caffeine is a diuretic, which means it makes you pee. And it increases your body's production of urine by helping your kidneys draw out salt and water. So if you're consuming a ton of caffeine, or that's all that you're consuming during the day, or you didn't drink much caffeine yesterday and now you're drinking a ton of caffeine, then it can cause dehydration. But if you are drinking enough water, you're not consuming a crazy amount of caffeine, you're regulating, making sure you're drinking enough water with your caffeine, you will probably be okay. So you still have to be mindful of it. You can't just, I'm just going to drink coffee and energy drinks all day and I'll be fine. Like, no, you still have to drink, number one, not a crazy amount of caffeine, but that's not healthy in general. And two, make sure you are also drinking water, because that is also important. But drinking water is important anyway. So keep that in mind. Now, you've probably been nodding along this whole time, being like, okay, that makes sense. Don't really need to change anything. That sounds great. Well, now I'm going to throw a little wrench in things. So, as I've said, caffeine is not necessarily bad in and of itself in small doses, not all the time. In addition to that, you also should not be drinking it in the afternoon and evening. And granted, you might be like, okay, well, yeah, duh, don't drink caffeine in the evening. Like, that's just dumb. But even in the afternoon, like, anytime after, like, some people say noon, some people say 2 p.m. But because the caffeine will mess with your circadian rhythm, and which that's a whole nother thing. I need to do a whole episode about the circadian rhythm. And Alex Clark actually just came out with an episode about the circadian rhythm and how it affects everything and how light affects your circadian rhythm and how all of our circadian rhythms are messed up due to a multitude of things. One of those things being caffeine, the amount of caffeine that we drink. So definitely go listen to that. It's the Culture Apothecary, wherever you listen to podcasts. It's so interesting. It's you have to listen to it. It's amazing. And I'm gonna have to do a little recap episode about that at some point. Because it's really so it's wild. But so caffeine after like 2 p.m. is a no-no. Like it will mess with your circadian rhythm. And then you're not going to get enough, like, your quality of sleep isn't going to be as great. You're not going to be able to get as much sleep. And then you're just going to be needing more caffeine the next day. So it messes the whole thing up. And even if you're like, oh, well, I can still fall asleep. Well, guess what? Even if you can still fall asleep, that doesn't mean that your quality of sleep is amazing. Because if you're drinking coffee in the afternoon or energy drinks in the afternoon, chances are it probably isn't. And maybe it hasn't been super great for a long time. So maybe it seems normal. But caffeine in the afternoon is not doing you any favors. And especially if you're waking up in the morning and you're still tired or you don't feel like you can get out of bed in the morning, that is not a good thing. That is a sign that you did not get enough sleep or you did not get enough good quality sleep and your circadian rhythm is off. And that is something that I've battled with in my own life because I'm in college, and in college it's hard to get enough sleep and to get good quality sleep. And I noticed that I would be going to bed and I would be getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep and I would still wake up exhausted in the morning and I'd be like, what the heck is wrong with me? And so I had to like do a couple things to try to fix that, and I'm still trying to work on that and figure that out. But your circadian rhythm is so important. And if you're messing that up, your body is going to thank you if you put it back the way it's supposed to be and if you do things that are going to be healthy for your circadian rhythm in your body. And you're going to feel better too. So now I want to switch gears a little bit and I want to talk about caffeine and people with ADHD. And this is something that has come up in my life because I know a lot of people that have ADHD, and some of them will drink caffeine like in the evening because it makes them tired. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I should do some research about that. And so I did a lot of research about that, and I did a lot of looking into it. And it looks like there isn't a lot of definite information about why caffeine affects people with ADHD the way that it does. But there is a little bit of information out there, and a lot of people or a lot of the research seems to point to the fact that caffeine pushes off, your melatonin production, and it increases your production of dopamine, right? Um, and so a lot of people notice like a crash after like their coffee wears off or their energy drink wears off or, you know, whatever the case may be. And when some people it's more noticeable than others, and for some people that's why they drink multiple per day. But because a lot of the effects of caffeine are stronger on people with ADHD, because of how ADHD works, it is possible that the crash that people get after the caffeine wears off is stronger with people that have ADHD because their brains and their bodies have been working overtime to compensate for that. So after the caffeine drops off, that all comes back and it makes you really tired. Now, that being said, I still don't see any reason to think that nowhere does it say that the caffeine still doesn't affect your circadian rhythm and obviously your melatonin production and all of that, just like everyone else. And so, even if it does help someone with ADHD to like calm their brain and maybe be more tired so that they can sleep, I'm sure it still messes with your circadian rhythm and your hormones and all of that. And so, if possible, I would try to find other ways to manage that. Because I'm sure that's still not the best way of going about it. So, I'll just leave that there. I wanted to talk a little bit about that because I know people that will go get coffee like at 9 o'clock at night, or they'll drink an energy drink. And I'm like, bro, what are you doing? Like, why are you drinking a Monster when it's like 10 o'clock? Like, what? Like, why? And I'll be like, well, it makes me tired and it'll help me sleep. And I'm like, okay. And so I wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit because it is really interesting how caffeine affects people with ADHD differently. And I can see how it would help. But that being said, you still have to be careful because the caffeine still might negatively affect you. And caffeine also can have negative effects on people with ADHD. It can make ADHD symptoms much worse. It can make anxiety much worse. ADHD sometimes is paired with insomnia, and when that's paired with caffeine, it can create even worse problems with sleeping, and fatigue and caffeine dependence. So you still should be very, very careful with how you use it and when you drink it and all of that because it can still negatively affect you, whether you notice it right away or not. And I want to add a little disclaimer in here before we start getting into all of the other crap that's in the energy drinks, not counting the caffeine. And I just want to put it out there that sleep is important and taking care of your body is important. And that's obviously kind of what this whole thing is about. And even though caffeine and energy drinks, and that's what we're talking about right now, obviously, and energy drinks may not be like deadly for you, and caffeine can be regulated so that it's not as bad for you as maybe some other things. But while you're thinking about that and while you're doing that, you should still be taking into consideration the other things that you should also be focusing on in your life and what your priorities are, because sleep is incredibly important. And I want to share some information with you guys. Not on this podcast, but maybe some other time. About sleep. We need to talk about that for sure, because sleep is so incredibly important. And having your circadian rhythm, I know I keep bringing this up, and it's kind of like, okay, well, circadian rhythm this, circadian rhythm that, but your circadian rhythm has a huge effect on you, and I want you to go listen to that podcast. If you don't, I'm going to do a recap, but you should still go listen to it. But your circadian rhythm is so important, and sleep is so important. And I know it's so hard for a lot of us as college students or with work or with kids or whatever it may be. But if you get enough sleep, your brain will function better. You'll be better with decision making. You won't be as stressed or as exhausted. And you'll be able to handle the challenges of the day better if you get enough sleep, and your brain has more sleep and is able to heal more when you sleep, and your body is more ready for the day. So even though sometimes I get that maybe you want to drink an energy drink here and there, or you want coffee or that kind of a thing, and sometimes you just want to give in and be like, okay, just this one time I'm going to have it. Like I did that the other day. I was driving home from college, and it's a 12-hour drive, and I almost fell asleep on the road, and I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to go get an energy drink. And those of you that follow me on my personal Instagram probably saw that. I had my first Monster the other day. And so I know that sometimes you're going to want to give in and be like, okay, fine. And obviously you can't be perfect all the time, like we're human. But energy drinks and coffee should not be in the place of sleep. You should not be giving yourself the easy way out and being like, okay, well, I'm going to go to bed at 2, but I'll be able to get an energy drink tomorrow. Like, no, I know that's the easiest thing to do, and it would be so nice to do that, and it'd be so much easier and just like so much nicer, because we want to have, like, we want to stay up late and we want to do things and we want all of that. Like, I get it. But you should try to decide what your priorities are, because even though we have this great thing where we can go get caffeine and go get an energy drink, and that's awesome, it's not, even if there were no side effects to caffeine and there was nothing wrong with it, which is not true, but if that was true, it would still not even come close to the benefits of actually getting the sleep that your body needs and your body was created to have. So don't give yourself the easy way out of giving yourself an excuse not to get enough sleep because you're going to go get an energy drink tomorrow. Like, every once in a while, I get it. Like, you should still strive to do what's healthiest and best for your body. But if you have to do that every once in a while, I get it. But do not give yourself the easy way out. And there are other ways to sustain your body, like getting enough sleep, like eating nutritious meals. Because if you eat a good breakfast and like you are eating good food that is going to give you energy, you are not going to be as tired during the day. So if you're eating a bunch of junk food and a bunch of sugar and a bunch of food that's not going to sustain you for the full day, then you're going to get tired. Whereas if you eat good protein and good carbs and you drink a lot of water, like, you're going to have those nutrients that your body needs to make it through the day. So I just wanted to put that out there. Like, just because you may be able to find a way to justify drinking an energy drink does not mean that you should. And you should really think about what you're giving yourself and what you're consuming, and not just giving yourself an easy way out. Okay, so now we come to the part of the episode that you all have been waiting for. The part actually specifically about energy drinks. So, as I said, I didn't talk a whole lot about actual energy drinks in this episode because it's more about caffeine, and it's the parts of the energy drinks that are really harmful are all the artificial ingredients and the sugar and all of that crap. And I could do a whole episode series about all of those. So I kind of focus on caffeine. I'll probably make another episode where we talk about some of the artificial colors and artificial food sweeteners and food dyes and all of that. Um, so I'm just gonna do a quick little overview here. Um, so a lot of energy drinks they say they're 0 calories, but they have artificial sweeteners in them. And artificial sweeteners are actually, a lot of people would say they're worse than natural sugar because your body doesn't know how to process them because they're artificial and they're chemicals and they're completely new to your body. And so they can be worse for you than actual sugar that actually has calories in it. And the artificial sweeteners can actually be addictive and they can actually make you more obese long term. Because they're very addictive. And then a lot of the artificial food coloring and all of that are also bad for you. And I know there's not a lot of artificial food dye in energy drinks, but there is in some. And I just want to put it out there that artificial food dye often has a negative effect on people with ADHD. It makes their symptoms stronger, which I find very interesting. And I was trying to put this off to the end of the episode to tell you guys this, but I am creating a website. It's already public, and for each of my episodes, I'm going to be putting a little blog post on there. I'm starting a blog. I'm going to make a blog post, and for each episode, I'm going to list all of the sources and articles that I read and places that I found the information in that episode so you guys can go look for yourself. And I'm also going to link, there was a part earlier in the episode where I talked about I want to give you guys some information on sleep, and I didn't want to do it to a later episode. I'm actually going to link that in my post for this episode. It's a TED Talk. It's on YouTube. It's not super long. We actually had to watch it for one of my psych classes in college. It's very interesting. And I'm also going to link that Culture Apothecary episode about the circadian rhythm. I'm just going to put the YouTube link in there, but you can also find it on Spotify. And so I'm going to put all of that information for you. I'm also going to put some articles about all the artificial crap, so you can go look into that for yourself. But so that's my whole website pitch. You can find that, the links in my Instagram bio. So I'm super excited about that. But back to today's topic, which is energy drinks. A lot of the energy drinks have artificial flavoring and artificial sweeteners in them, and so they say they're 0 calories, but there's actually a ton of crap. And so that is the bigger issue with the energy drinks, and not just the caffeine, because the caffeine, I mean, we just talked about all of that. So there's pros and cons, and you should try to avoid a lot of it if you can. But the big harmful thing in the energy drinks is all the artificial crap and all of that. And you may have heard that the FDA is working on banning a lot of that, or at least giving like regulations about it. And I'll actually have you know, you might already know this, but a lot of people don't, that in Europe, a lot of these ingredients are already banned. And a lot of these food companies made recipes for these different cereals with artificial food dye and all of this crap in it. And they made different recipes to sell in Europe because it was banned over there. And yet we still have them in our food. And so I also want to warn you, as you do your research, be careful what you're reading, because a lot of the government funded or like big websites that pop up right at the top, like Mayo Clinic and a lot of those things. I'm trying to think of what else comes up when you search Healthline, Cleveland Clinic, those things. They can be kind of misleading, and a lot of the pharmaceutical industry and the medical industry is bought out by big food and all that. Which is how we got here in the first place. So as you do your research, be careful about the sources that you're looking at and all of that, because a lot of these sites will tell you like oh, it's fine, or it has very minimal effect on your health, like it's okay. And then other sites will tell you, okay, so this was actually found to be linked to cancer. Like, think you should know. So, yeah, just, be mindful as you're doing your research, and I'll link some things. And as I develop my website more, I'll give you sources on there too, and give you like experts that know what they're talking about and are credible, because I want to help you guys out in that area, because it is very hard to find information that is actually true and credible and with people that actually know what they're talking about. So, yeah, there's my little plug for my website. I'm going to put some information on there, and I'm going to cite all of my sources for you guys. And I also want to put it out there that obviously all this information that I'm talking about is information that I found myself in my own research. I am not a medical professional. I am not claiming to diagnose anything or give you any medical advice. This is just based on my own research and my own thoughts, so take it with a grain of salt and nobody sue me. And I'm going to list all my information so that you can go back and look at it if you want to. And last thing I wanted to touch on before I wrap up this episode is that just because, quote, everything makes you sick, or, quote, everything gives you cancer, doesn't mean you can't try to be healthy. And this is something I come across a lot in my own life with my peers or different people that I encounter, and they're like, well, everything gives you cancer, because I'll see somebody's energy drink in their hand and I'll roll my eyes, or, however that occurs. And they'll just be like, well, everything's bad for you. Everything gives you cancer. Like, sunscreen gives you cancer, but the sun also gives you cancer. So why even bother? Well, just because there are a lot of things that make you sick doesn't mean you can't try to do better where you can. Just because you can't fix everything doesn't mean you can't try. And even if you can only fix one or two things in your life, that will still help you more than if you didn't try at all. And this might be like an extreme comparison, but if you think about the whole like sin and the fall and creation and all that, we are broken human beings. We are going to sin, and we are never going to be perfect. But does that mean we don't try to be more like Christ where we can? And I'm not saying that trying to be healthy and doing all this crunchy stuff is like being more like Christ, although I would argue that it is, because in a way, you're trying to be more healthy, and you're trying to be more, and you're trying to live the way that God created you. But I'm not trying to make that comparison. I'm just trying to give you an example of, just because we can't achieve perfection doesn't mean we can't strive for it. In this day and age, yes, it would be very, very hard, if not impossible, to be completely as healthy as I would want to be. Because it's hard to find truly healthy ingredients, and it's expensive, and people are trying to stop you. So it is very hard, and it could be impossible. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to try, and that doesn't mean that you shouldn't try. Every little change you make helps you. And that goes for, like, everything in life, honestly. Like, there are a lot of things that you could strive for, or that you are striving for, that it would be very hard to achieve perfection, if not impossible to achieve perfection in that area. But does that mean that you just quit and don't start at all? No. You still try. So, for the people that want to say, well, everything gives you cancer, so why even bother? Why don't you try? Because if you try to eliminate some of the things that might give you cancer, you might not get cancer. Or you might be much less likely to get cancer. Or you might just have a better quality of life in general. But if you're going to say, don't try because you're not going to achieve perfection, I would like to see you follow that principle in every other area of life. and then see where you end up. And I also know that it's hard. It's not easy, and it takes effort, and it's hard to figure out what to do and how to do it. And that's why I'm here, and that's why this podcast exists. And that's because I'm trying to create ways for you to learn more about how to live a healthier lifestyle and how to make it manageable, because it is hard, especially for people our age or people just starting out and getting into this, and it's very overwhelming, and I get that. So that's why we're here, and that's why I have my website, and I'm going to put some information on there to help. And as far as this episode goes, I've already touched on a little bit of other things to do besides drinking energy drinks, and that's, trying to get more sleep, trying to get enough sleep, drinking more water. That will help, eating nutritious food that's going to sustain you throughout the day. I know sometimes that's hard, but again, sometimes you have to decide what your priorities are, and that's up to you. And so, yeah, don't just give up because you can't achieve perfection, because if we did that, we would never get anywhere. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode all about energy drinks. We covered different areas from caffeine and how it affects you, how it affects your circadian rhythm, how it affects people with ADHD, and even all the crap that the food industry throws into energy drinks. This is the Vital Reset, cultivating harmony in physical vitality, mental clarity, and spiritual growth. I'm your host, Izzy Marino, and I can't wait to see you next time.